The story of Mikhail Isaakovich Kreintsin. I am a frontline scout. A volunteer of the People's Militia Division, I rose from a simple soldier to a squad leader. During the war, I was severely wounded 3 times, awarded the 4 Courage Medal and orders. I was born in 1923 in the small town of Dobrovelichkovka, Odessa region, into a working-class family. My father was a simple man, but with a difficult fate. He went through the First World War, the entire Civil War, served in the cavalry, and was hit by bullets many times. He had fingers cut off his right hand and 4 more wounds that left marks on his body. My childhood was not joyful. There was too much hunger and hardship in it. It is hard to remember those years. I finished 7 grades of Jewish school, and when I turned 15, our family moved to Moscow. We settled in Vladikino, in a workers' barracks. My father got a job at a factory, my elder brother Samuel entered an institute, and I began to study at the Odessa machine building technical school. From my youth, I prepared myself for the army. I played sports, was a sincere patriot and a Komsomol member. I completed the Voroshilov Cavalry School, motorcycle courses, and, shortly before the war, training at a sniper school, where the best pre-conscripts were sent. I worked at plant number 213 of the defense industry, assembling aviation instruments. After the 3rd year of technical school, we were required to undergo practical training at the factory, rotations in the turning, fitting, and assembly shops. The times were anxious. Everyone understood that war was coming. It was felt in everything, even in the air. The years before the war were full of events. We heard about the battles at Khalkhin, the war with Finland, the annexation of Western territories. There was continuous militaristic propaganda in newspapers and on the radio, and everything around us was preparing for new campaigns. My father openly said, "There will soon be a war with the Germans." This news would not have been a shock to me. I knew in advance that it would happen. In June 1941, we were informed that workers of defense factories and students of our technical school were not subject to conscription. We received a deferment and were supposed to work until the end of the war. From August, when German air raids on Moscow began, I actually lived at the factory in Philly. During the day, I worked in the shop, and at night I was on duty on the roof, ready to extinguish incendiary bombs. My brother Samuel had already gone to the front as a radio operator in an artillery regiment in the north. There in the Arctic, there were good chances of survival, and he was lucky in that. I went to the military enlistment office twice, volunteering but unsuccessfully. At the factory, they refused to lift my deferment, shouting that only traitors can abandon the motherland in a difficult hour. The military enlistment office demanded a document from the factory, but it was impossible to get it. Even when the first divisions of the People's Militia were formed, only a few dozen communists were released from our factory by list, and the rest were kept. At the end of September 1941, the factory was evacuated to the city of Engels. Almost all the workers left with their families. I stayed. When the factory began to evacuate, a car was sent for me too. Several students with whom we worked together were already sitting in the back. All that remained was to throw in my duffel bag and climb inside myself. But at that moment, an invisible force seemed to stop me, preventing me from taking the last step. One of the guys threw at me, "Mishka, get in! Your people have all long since bolted from the city," hinting at my nationality. These words burned me more than fire. I turned around, cursed him, and walked away, never getting into the car. 30 years later, I accidentally met this man. He had become a famous aircraft designer, a hero of socialist labor. We exchanged a few words, and he asked where I had disappeared to then, as I had been the most daring among the guys. I showed him my orders and said, "This, Sasha, is partly thanks to you. And 4 wounds too. My people all bolted then, as you said?" But my decision to stay in Moscow was nothing extraordinary. There were many like me. 300 people voluntarily left our factory alone. We all made a choice. The motherland was dearer than life. Moscow in those days was gloomy, cold, frozen in fear and tension. On October 15, 1941, on one of the most difficult days, when panic began and it seemed that the city was about to surrender to the Germans, I voluntarily joined the 3rd Communist Division of Moscow workers. I was assigned to the 3rd Rifle Regiment, to the Reconnaissance and Communications Section of the 3rd Battalion. I served with this division until the end of February 1942, until my first serious wound. The Moscow People's Militia was formed in several waves. The first wave yielded 12 rifle divisions. Volunteers, workers, students, intellectuals, yesterday's school children, enrolled in them, a total of 200,000 people. These people were not subject to ordinary conscription, but went at the call of conscience. A month later, almost all of them found themselves in the Vyazma cauldron, where they died or were captured. Only a few emerged from those divisions. The flower of the nation, the best people of the capital, and almost all died. When the threat of Moscow's capture became real, the formation of the second wave of militia began. There were many volunteers, but there was a shortage of weapons and uniforms, so only 2 new divisions were created. I ended up in the 3rd Communist Division of Moscow workers. The admissions committee worked in the school building. There, volunteers were assigned to regiments. Crowds of people, workers, battalions, and whole formations, students, individuals with assignments from the Central Committee of the Komsomol. Everyone was looking for their place. I almost got lost in this mass, but an acquaintance grabbed me and literally squeezed me into a group from the Kiev district, which had already been assigned a place in the 3rd Rifle Regiment. We spent the night in the buildings of the Food Institute, and 2 days later we went to the forest near Kaluga, dug dugouts, and waited for weapons and uniforms. But 300 people were not accepted. They formed a separate rifle brigade. The contingent in the division was special. These were ideological people, ready for self-sacrifice. 70% were communists and Komsomol members. Half had higher education, students, teachers, professors. But most had no military experience. There were also white ticket holders and people with limited health suitability, but all came voluntarily. In the battalion, there were entire companies of students or workers from the same factory. For example, students from the Bauman Institute ended up in the reconnaissance company. The national composition was mainly Russians and Jews. The age range was from 17 to 55 years old. We waited about 2 weeks for uniforms. First, they issued white sheepskin coats, then took them back, replacing them with old greatcoats and Budanovka hats. The weapons were worse. We were given long, single-shot French rifles with bayonets and no cartridges. We joked that it was props from Moss film warehouses. Later, they were replaced with Mosin noggins and carbines. Scouts received submachine guns, and the machine gun company received weapons from the First World War. Company commanders were appointed from those who had served before the war, sometimes even Civil War veterans. Our regiment was led by Pishenishny, the commissar was Bogomolkin. Everyone's mood was cheerful. There was no panic. We knew that we might die, but we would not retreat. Our 3rd Moscow Communist Rifle Division took up defensive positions in the area of Khimki, Rabachi Posolok, and the northern river port. We had time to prepare, almost 2 months, as the Germans never reached our positions. Only reconnaissance units and artillerymen participated in combat operations, and the majority of the division did not engage in battles until January 1942. I happened to be among those who saw their first combat near Moscow. There were barricades on the Khimki highway, and there, in a skirmish, I received a shrapnel wound to my arm from a grenade. It was not severe. I did not go beyond the medical company, but it was my first baptism of fire. In January, when the threat of the capital's capture had passed, our division was withdrawn from its positions and sent to the northwestern front. We crossed Lake Saliger on the ice in 25-degree frost, made a forced march through deep snow, and took up positions near the villages of Sidorovo, Pavlovo, and the village of Novaya Russa. Then the division was renamed the 130th Rifle Division, and our 3rd Rifle Regiment became the 664th. The battles there were incomparably harder than near Moscow. The Germans had fortified their defenses with dugouts, machine gun nests, and mortars. First, ski battalions in white camouflage went on the attack. Thousands of men advanced across an open field, but German fire mowed them down without mercy. After their demise, it was our turn to go on frontal attacks through deep snow. We fired on the move, but hitting a dugout embrasure from 200 meters was almost impossible. On February 23, 1942, in the 3rd attack, I was severely wounded. A mine exploded directly in front of me. Shrapnel hit my legs and shoulder. I fell among hundreds of dead comrades. Crawling was impossible. The Germans finished off anyone who moved. I lay in the snow for several hours thinking I wouldn't make it out. Only with the onset of darkness was I able to crawl back. It was then that a medic, a sanitary squad member, crawled to me and pulled me out. I woke up in a hut filled with wounded, but soon an aerial bomb hit it. After the bombing, those who were still alive were loaded onto trucks and taken to a hospital in Valdai. There I felt human warmth for the first time. A cup of tea with condensed milk, bunks with white sheets. After a month and a half, I was discharged, although the doctors were unable to remove some of the shrapnel. I did not return to my division. From the hospital, I was assigned to a marching company, and with it, ended up in the 163rd Rifle Division, 759th Rifle Regiment. We were lined up, and a senior lieutenant loudly asked, "Any volunteers for reconnaissance?" I stepped out of line with several other guys. After a brief interrogation, only 2 were kept, me and another soldier named Maslov. We were offered service in the regimental reconnaissance platoon. Thus I found myself in a new role. Our regiment was stationed near Demyansk. This sector of the front was static. Both sides maintained strong defenses, and offensives were rarely launched. Artillery, snipers, and reconnaissance were mainly at work. The terrain consisted of forests and swamps, with knee-deep water in the trenches and impassable mud. Everything was mined, every meter under fire. The platoon had 10 to 12 men, though the authorized strength was 26. Losses were terrible, and personnel were replaced every month, but everyone was a volunteer. The young men believed they would survive, and I too believed in my invulnerability. Our tasks were simple and deadly. Observe the enemy's front line, identify firing points, and always capture tongues, prisoners. It was believed that every 10 days the regiment should deliver at least 1 prisoner to headquarters, and the command demanded this at any cost. Our armament was standard: submachine guns, finished knives, grenades. We took 6 grenades on patrols, sometimes captured daggers. Pistols were rare. A sapper always accompanied us. Ahead lay minefields and rows of barbed wire with tin cans. I learned many things on the fly. Our Siberian, Vasily, a taiga hunter, knew the forest, could move quietly, and taught us all this. Thanks to him, we were saved more than once, but searches rarely ended successfully. Several times we took prisoners, but even then, tragedies occurred. One German officer, left with a knife, cut his own throat right before our eyes. Then we lost our awards and the platoon commander was removed. But another time we managed to capture a tongue alive, and then we were greeted as heroes. I participated in 4 months of continuous searches. During that time, we were only able to bring 3 prisoners to headquarters, but that was enough to be valued. We knew every mission could be our last. At the end of August 1942, we were discovered in the German rear. Fire came from all sides. We tried to break through the swamp, but a grenade exploded right in front of me. I was riddled with shrapnel. My comrades pulled me back. I ended up in the hospital on a Po-2 ambulance plane. I was placed in a cradle attached to the wings. So I was back in Moscow in the hospital of the Agricultural Academy. My parents came to me there. They hadn't evacuated, they stayed in the capital. My mother sat beside me crying and constantly trying to feed me a piece of black bread from her meager ration. They were very hungry. I never wrote to them that I was serving in reconnaissance, but they knew. They had twice received letters of gratitude from the regiment command for raising a patriotic son. 5 shrapnel pieces were removed from me. The doctors didn't dare touch the others. They were too deeply embedded. By the end of the year, I carried a whole collection of wounds in my body. I stayed in the hospital for 2 months, then insisted on an early discharge. I wanted to return to the front, but instead I was assigned to a distribution point. Hundreds of us recovering frontline soldiers were gathered and our certificates and documents were checked. A colonel delivered a speech. The Army needed commanders with combat experience, and we were offered to become cadets of the Moscow Infantry School, named after the Supreme Soviet of the RSFSR. No one was asked. We were simply enrolled. So, at the end of 1942, I became a cadet, although I understood this was just a reprieve from the front, a temporary respite from death. The Moscow Infantry School was indeed considered elite. It had strong traditions, a special status. We, the frontline soldiers, were formed into a separate cadet battalion of about 400 people. In total, no less than 2,000 cadets entered in the November 1942 intake. We lived quite well there. Normal meals, good uniforms, leather belts with a star. The commanders treated us with reserve but respect, especially those who already had frontline experience. We saw studying as a break. Everyone understood that platoon commanders didn't live long at the front, but no one complained. We accepted our fate. We studied for 5 months, but in March 1943, at a general formation, we were announced. 2 cadet battalions were being sent to the front early, not as officers, but as sergeants. Such was the situation. The front needed people. For many, this was a blow, as many sincerely wanted to become officers. Our battalion was transported by echelon to Tikhonovo Pustin Station in the Tula region. There, the 51st Rifle Division of the 2nd Formation was being formed from the remnants of the 15th Cadet Rifle Brigade. During the Civil War, a division with that number gained fame as Blucher's Perekopskaya, but that was not remembered. The 1st 51st Division perished in the Kharkov encirclement in 1942, and now a new one was being created. The formation lasted a month. Then we were marched for 2 months along the front line until, in August 1943, the division went on the offensive towards Yelnya. I was assigned to the 348th Rifle Regiment as an artillery scout for a 120mm mortar battery. In the 120mm mortar battery, I served as an artillery reconnaissance observer. This role gave me more independence. I was not at the battery, but at the forward observation post, together with the infantry. My task was to spot German firing positions, transmit coordinates, adjust fire, and repair communication damage. This meant I was always on the front line, often even ahead of my own battery. I felt independent, and perhaps that's what prompted me to choose artillery reconnaissance. Our first serious battles were at Yelnya. I remember the village of Semenovka, which changed hands 3 times. We held our ground in an open field when German tanks advanced on us, about 40 vehicles. It was a terrible battle. Battalions bled, retreated, and we fought our way back to a village with the difficult name of Gorsky Kutora. There was an incident there that I will remember for the rest of my life. A group of us soldiers stumbled upon a German strongpoint, captured it, and discovered huge captured supplies in the dugout: cognac, wine, bacon, ham, canned food, even cigars. We sat among the corpses, covered in blood, surrounded on all sides, but for a while we came alive. We ate, smoked cigars, drank a little. It all seemed absurd. By morning, we decided to break through. We took German machine guns and advanced. In the battle, we were scattered, and only 7 men made it back to our own lines. I appeared at the battery just as the battalion commander was dictating the list of casualties and called out my name. For them, I was already listed as killed in action. After Yelnya, we participated in the battles for Smolensk. We advanced through swamps, attacked fortified positions near the village of Igori. The losses were enormous. In October, the division was redeployed to Neville. There, only the numbers remained of the regiments. They were so bled dry. We moved with the cavalry corps through the so-called Neville Corridor, which was later nicknamed the Bottle. There were continuous battles, unsuccessful attacks, constant losses. Before New Year, we were thrown into the swamps near Gorodok, Vitebsk region. The infantry got bogged down in the quagmires, men drowned, and the Germans met us in ambushes. They built log fences, firing at us through loopholes at point-blank range. The front line froze near Vitebsk for 6 months. It was a heavy, grueling positional war, similar to what I had seen near Demyansk. Near Vitebsk, in the swamps and forests, something happened that changed my fate. I had a falling out with 2 artillery scouts from the reinforcements, men from Kharkov. One turned out to be a criminal, the other stuck with him. They insulted me about my nationality, saying things I couldn't forgive. I threatened that they wouldn't live long. That night, a shootout broke out at their observation post. They were found dead in the morning. The special officer summoned me. I swore I wasn't involved, that I was at my own OP that night, and my comrades could confirm it. But they found a notebook with my notes, names of villages where we fought. For me, it was a tribute to the fallen, a promise I had once made to a comrade, to write it down so I could tell the story after the war. But on the front, keeping notes was considered a crime, punishable by a tribunal. The regimental commander, Sakyan, intervened. He made a quick decision. Without trial, he sent me to a penal company for a month. So in one day, I, a sergeant, volunteer, communist, scout with 3 wounds and a For Courage medal, became a penal soldier. I was transferred to the 42nd Separate Penal Company of the 4th Shock Army. There I was issued a PPS and ammunition and assigned to a platoon. A few days later, we were thrown into a reconnaissance and force operation near the village of Zauzeria. I managed to run about 50 meters when bullets struck my side. One merely grazed my ribs, the other tore out a piece of flesh. I fell but remained alive. I was pulled out and taken to the medical battalion. 2 weeks later, I returned to the regiment with a wound certificate. The certificate saved me. I had atoned for my guilt with blood. At headquarters, I was relisted, as I had formerly been considered missing in action. At the battery, I was greeted like a family member. They even arranged a real frontline banquet. Since then, I knew one could easily end up in a penal company, sometimes for a trifle. But in reality, there was little difference between a penal soldier and an infantryman. Infantry also died by the thousands. The status was just different, but the fate was the same. After the penal company, I returned to my mortar crew. We fought near Polotsk. There, the Germans occupied a fortified embankment, bristling with machine guns. Before it lay 500 meters of open field. 4 infantry attacks ended in nothing. The entire field was covered with corpses. Self-propelled guns were brought up, but Junkers attacked them, and the vehicles burned. Then the penal company was thrown into battle. Former officers, recently released from captivity. Thanks to their attack, Polotsk was taken. But the price was terrible. The company was almost completely wiped out. I saw many such scenes. Sometimes penal soldiers were completely annihilated in one battle, but regular rifle battalions died the same way. The infantry was always doomed, and we all understood that. In the autumn of 1944, I again found myself in regimental reconnaissance, but not for long. In winter, we advanced in East Prussia. German reconnaissance there operated professionally. Night sorties, sabotage, precise raids. They knew how to fight, and we had to respect the enemy. By the end of the war, I voluntarily joined the infantry. I served as a squad leader, then as an assistant platoon commander. I wanted to be shoulder to shoulder with the soldiers, to share every step with them. After so many years at the front, the war became a job for me, a military toil. I believed I would survive, and that feeling helped me move forward. We spent the final months of the war in East Prussia. The battles there were fierce. Every village became a fortress. Every trench the Germans held to the last. We pushed forward, but the price was still the same: heavy losses. In the spring of 1945, I was already serving in the infantry as a squad leader and assistant platoon commander. We fought our way to the very end of the war. Shortly after Victory Day, I was demobilized. The decree about 3 wounds worked. I had more, and I had the right to return home earlier than others. I left the army at the end of 1945, although my peers born in 1923 were widely demobilized only in 1947. Upon returning to Moscow, I tried to find my comrades. I visited Lyona Kaufman, my brother's friend, with whom we had both joined the People's Militia Division. But he died in reconnaissance in 1944. I went to the addresses of other comrades. Almost all of them had been killed. I remember going to Presnya to find the family of a soldier named Markov, with whom we had shared a trench and smoked German cigars together in that absurd dugout near Yelnya. I wanted to tell his relatives how he died. The door opened, and there he stood himself, alive but on crutches. He was wounded in that battle, lay among the dead for 2 days, but survived and was saved by a medic. Such meetings were rare. The war had taken most of my friends forever. Our division, our regiments, they almost entirely lay in the ground. By the end of the war, only numbers and memories remained of each unit. I returned home alive with shrapnel in my body and orders on my chest. But the main thing I brought back from the war was the memory of those who did not return. They paid the ultimate price. It was their names I carried in my notebook, which almost cost me my life. And as long as I live, I will remember them all.